You don't need to be an evolutionary biologist or walk around in the woods for a couple decades to know that there is a nature to things. Everything in nature has its way of being natural. It sounds so redundant. It's so self-evident. But sometimes you just have to point out the self-evident because for whatever reason, we humans, we think that we can overcome and defeat our nature to some degree. And this is folly at the most profound level. And I find it humorous that no one seems to recognize how absolutely insane it is to believe that we can, as a gender or a species or any other subclass, completely change our nature. Now, there are some individual differences, and I will grant you that, but for the most part, we are what we are. And that's what I want to talk about today. The nature of men and the nature of women, and why we should not be monkeying around with some of these basic underlying truths. Because when we do, we cause disarray, we cause problems. So let's talk about it. I've owned dogs all my life, and I know there is a distinct difference between male dogs and female dogs. Their behaviors are completely different. Now, there's some similarities and there are some overlaps, but male and female dogs are very different. We share about 80% of our DNA with a dog. 90% with a cat, which is kind of weird, but we share about 98% of our DNA with chimps. Now, I have not spent a lot of time with chimpanzees, granted, but I bet if you ask an evolutionary biologist or a zoologist or anyone who spends time with chimpanzees or studying them, they will tell you that there is extremely distinct differences between male and female chimps. Male chimps are much more gregarious, I've just read this, much more social, much more aggressive. They have very specific tendencies. Female chimps tend to be more isolated. They tend to groom each other. They tend to take care of their young. They tend to be more nurturing. So it's not even close between male and female chimps. I would argue that male and female humans are distinctly different too. Not just physically, but in our nature. That we are very, very different. So, what brought this to my attention was in the comments a guy who, after I think 13 or 14 years, is now going through a divorce. And he briefly explained his circumstances, and it became really apparent as to why some of his problems occurred. And I could argue that they might have been predestined to occur. That from the moment he met her, the outcome was already determined. Now, maybe I'm overdoing it, maybe I'm overstating it, and that's very possible. And like I said, there are certainly individual differences between, one man and another man, and one woman and another woman, but generally speaking, just keeping things general, I would suggest this poor guy was doomed right from the very beginning. It starts off, he says in his comment, "My wife is a high earner." And I've heard this story so many times, and it starts off the same way. My wife is a high earner. And so, we're seeing more and more of that, obviously, in our culture now. And I think that it's just going to get worse and worse. We're going to see more and more women who are the high earners in the relationship. And so dealing with this issue now is really critical. So the gender roles, by default, kind of got flipped. Because her job was bringing home the bacon, and there are certain logistical tasks that need to be addressed in any lifestyle. Because he's not making as much money, he by default becomes Mr. Mom. So he's at home with the kids. He's doing the grocery shopping. He has, in a way, become the wife, while she has, in a way, become the husband. Now, we would all like to think that we're open-minded enough to handle this situation.
Okay, let's go.
There's nothing inherently wrong with changing roles, right? You know, we are thinking people, we are thinking humans. So you would believe that just because a woman makes a lot more money than a man, that in a loving relationship, it would be possible for these roles to be switched without there being too much disruption to the romantic nature of their relationship, right? You think that they would be able to work this out, figure it out. Obviously they talked about it. Obviously they knew it before they got into the situation. But for some reason, it seems to become a problem. And for him, after, I think it was 13 years of marriage, a couple of kids, she's starting to treat him very badly because now he is completely dependent on her. And if I remember correctly, she was deciding who was going on vacation and who wasn't going on vacation because she made the money. I think what happens in these situations is that we run squarely into the nature of our humanity. And for thousands and thousands of generations, going back to the very beginning of time, men have been the providers. Now, we can talk all we want about boss girls and all that stuff and how it's perfectly okay. And on one level, sure, it's perfectly okay. But at a more profound level, in our instincts, our genes, whatever, it's contradictory to what we know. It's contradictory to the way we have always been. And that makes it extremely hard for women to continue to respect their man when he is put into a submissive position. When she now is calling the shots because she is making the money. She's going to play a power trip. Because she earns all the money, she wants to make all the important decisions. She no longer respects her man enough to ask his opinion or to get feedback on anything. She's just going to do what she's going to do. And this leads to really big problems because it's just a matter of time before she's going to seek out another guy. And that's what happened in this case. Now, the commenter, loving his children and being the person who's primarily raised them, did not want to leave his kids. So he began, I wouldn't say cohabitating with this boyfriend, you know, with his wife, but he became an accomplice to it. So she's got a boyfriend, he's taking care of the kids, she's making all the decisions, and yeah, life is just wonderful. Can you even imagine? But this is just a perfect example of how when we violate the nature of who we are as human beings, we create the opportunity for absurd situations to occur and for our natural instincts to fight against it because it's an unnatural situation. When a woman becomes dominant in a relationship, it becomes problematic. And this is something that is overlooked by society. For some reason, we don't want to come to terms with the fact that we are, at our core, animals. And animals are instinctual. Dogs have a social structure in a pack. Humans, we cooperate for thousands and thousands of years, millions of years. But we do so by gender. Women do not go on hunting trips. Women generally are more nurturing. They're more organizational. They're more cooperative. They're more communicative. So working in an environment where those things are dominant makes perfect sense. If you've ever asked a woman what she wants, more than likely, if you're talking to an honest woman, she's going to say, I don't know. But if you press her, she'll come up with an answer. This will be an answer that sounds really good. It probably came out of Cosmo or one of these other women's magazines about what she's looking for in a man. And it'll be, I'm looking for emotional intelligence. I'm looking for someone who will listen to me, someone who will open up to me, someone who will be my emotional, companion through life. However, it has been my experience that if you decide that you're going to open up and share your deep, dark secrets with this girl, you are going to regret it, because she is not looking for that. In fact, quite the contrary. She wants you to listen to her emote. She does not want to listen to you emote. In fact, I would suggest that she is going to lose respect for you if you open up and start talking to her about, that time that you were so sad because your dad spanked you. Yeah, that's not going to work. That's not going to fly at all. So, women say that they're open-minded about gender roles. They say they're open-minded about men's behavior in relationships. And they may talk about wanting to have, an emotional, companion animal, man. But what they really want is they want a masculine man who's going to take charge of things, who's going to pay the bills, who's going to set the agenda, someone who is actually going to be a man, be a masculine man. They do not want to be filling that masculine role in the relationship. They may say they do, they may say they're open to it, they may say it's okay, but it's going to be a very rare set of circumstances where a woman is able to fill that role comfortably without disrupting the underlying foundation of the relationship. So you guys could be the best of friends, you could be great in bed together, you could have all this wonderful chemistry between you. But if she's the one who's bringing home the vast majority of the income and you're playing the role of the domestic partner, then there's a very good chance that you are going to lose your relationship. You will notice that women will test your masculinity at times, when you're dating especially. I've had it happen to me many times. Or a woman that you're with will cause some kind of a problem, a conflict, an issue that involves you becoming the hero, getting into it and sorting things out. The worst kinds of situations are when she starts a fight with a guy, especially a really big guy who's got a really bad disposition. Those are not the best situations. But those are tests. These are masculinity tests. They want to see how you manage the stress and the difficulty of a really hard spot to be in. I remember being out with this girl one time, and we were going to some kind of a concert or something, and there was lots of traffic. And I don't even know what this guy did, but he did something that obviously upset her, and she rolled down her window. And this is a very sweet, I didn't think sugar would melt in her mouth. She was just so sweet. Rolled down the window, put the whole top half of her body out of the car, flipped this guy off, and screamed a group of obscenities that would make any man quite impressed. Now, I could not see the size of the man that she was screaming at. Deebu, it's okay, pal. Relax. And I didn't want to, I was shocked. I was shocked that she would behave in that manner. I couldn't figure it out for a while. And now I look back on it and realize she was putting me in a test to see if I would stand behind her in a situation where she's acting like a complete idiot. And I didn't. I was like, you are an idiot. Do not ever do that again. That was completely uncalled for. That guy could have a gun for all we know. But yeah, women will do that to you. You got to be careful. And all they're doing is they're trying to see, are you going to play the masculine role, or are you going to walk away? And women will do this all the time. They want to see, do you have what it takes to be the man in her life? Because quite frankly, when they're having babies, they're very vulnerable. Ancestrally, through at a very instinctual level, they know that they need to be protected during this time when they are pregnant and having children, and when those children are very young. They need to believe that this man can provide for her no matter what. And these days, that's becoming much, much harder for them to find. We all know that the divorce rate hovers around 50% through all classes of ages and things like that. But when the woman out earns the man, the chance of divorce goes up by another 50%. Yeah, so you're now about 3/4 more likely to get divorced than remain married when she's out earning you. So these are enormous red flags. Now, our society has done a terrific job of promoting women to positions of responsibility and helping them earn large incomes. You know, giving them scholarships, giving them special treatment in schools, hell, building the whole school system around their needs. We've basically done that. So it's no wonder that they're coming out of school, filling these white-collar jobs and earning really good money. However, now they're all struggling because they no longer have masculine men that they can partner with, that they can form a family with. The number of men that are out earning them and are available for those kinds of partnerships in their peer group is very, very, very small. So the only thing they can do is go to older guys. And quite frankly, by the time you're in your 40s or 50s, yeah, I mean, a 25-year-old girl or whatever, even a 29-year-old girl, 30-year-old girl, I mean, she's good for fun, but I'm not so sure I really want to spend a lot of time with her, you know? I mean, you know, sex can only go for so long, and then it's like, okay, now we got to have a conversation, and quite frankly, I'm not sure that I'm wanting to spend the rest of my life with a millennial, you know? I mean, no offense, but quite honestly, we just don't have that much in common, you know? I'll talk about Led Zeppelin, they won't know anything that I'm talking about. They're gonna be talking about, I don't know, Beyonce, and I'll be like, whatever, you know? I mean, she's fine, but whatever. So, I don't think that our current circumstances can continue the way they are. Something's gonna have to give. Maybe the divorce courts will work in our favor. Because, you know, when women start paying alimony, oh my God, there are gonna be people marching in the streets. They're gonna be really upset about that. They are not gonna like that at all. Ooh, yeah, when they find themselves on the wrong end of family court, man, that might change things. All right, you guys, that's all I got for you. Hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please like and subscribe. If you know someone who's considering getting into one of these situations, or maybe she's the earner and he's gonna be the domestic guy, send him this video. Maybe it'll help him make a better decision. Anyway, until next time, stay healthy, and if you can, stay single.